Welcome everyone to round 37 of what feels like a pretty eventful AI summit. Today, we're going to be there. This particular session, we're going to be talking about the the AOP and CFO mandate in the AI era. So I'm going to be your facilitator for this conversation. My name is Jimmy Hallsworth. I'm the VP of Procurement at Spendflo. For those of you who met me earlier and saw our demo, Spendflo is an AI spend management platform, right? And so excited to kind of continue to talk with awesome leaders and folks, innovators across different industries to see how they're leveraging it. With me today, I got two fantastic guests to our panel members to talk through the CFO mandate and AOP and how AI is influencing those discussions. Priyanka, please introduce yourself first, and then Matt, I'll jump over to you.
Sure. Hey, you guys can hear me, right?
We got you.
Okay, so I'm Priyanka. I work as a VP Finance at Goldcast. I've been into finance for almost 2 decades, always been with startups and fast-growing companies. So that's my experience really have been. So I'm really excited to get into this session and, discuss the interesting things that we have planned for today. So looking forward to it, Jimmy. And
Awesome.
nice to meet you, Matt.
Sorry. And go ahead, Matt.
Sure. Yeah, Matt Barnes. I'm the CFO at Kuru Footwear. I've been doing a CFO gig for a number of years now at different consumer brands based in the United States and Utah at the moment, and spent first half of my career in tech as well. So been at all different types of sizes of companies and ownership and everything. So I've seen a lot over the years. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, great. So we're going to kind of dive in. I know we have maybe a tighter timeline for a lot of really good questions that I definitely want to hear your you guys opine on. So just to set context for everyone in this panel, Matt and Priyanka are going to share how they approach annual operating plans and how they integrate AI into the financial strategy, and not just from a how we're going to plan to buy and use AI, but also how they're leveraging AI in that planning, right? I think that's an important thing to say, is it's here now. So, to what degree are we using it? And then how they turn that AI and that visibility into a driver to kind of fuel the growth and the discipline of their organizations. So we're going to kick off with, I think, everyone's favorite topic in October, which is annual operating plans. I know we can't have enough meetings about them. So I think from top of mind standpoint, Matt, when you think about AOPs this year, right, and you're building those out, how are you doing it differently this year versus last year? What are the levers you're pulling? How are you considering AI into those conversations?
Yeah, the role of a CFO, it comes down to strategy, right? Most of the time, most of what I spend my time on is strategy, and helping the business make the right decisions at the right times. This is the first year, though, that we've really been able to leverage AI in the AOP or annual plan process. And actually I just returned from Shop Talk Fall here last month, and came away with kind of a mind-numbing, overwhelming amount of vendor insights and outreach in terms of what they can offer and who can do what, and it is overwhelming, as I said. But with all that said, I've been able to use AI in several cases as part of this plan cycle. We've started using it in demand planning. We've started using it as part of our benchmarking. In fact, I just finished analysis on many of our competitors and so on using AI, generative AI. It's been super helpful. I didn't have to go through manually and search through 10Ks to do all of that, or through a benchmark service and pay thousands of dollars for it. It was super easy. Looking forward, just kind of outside of my specific vertical, the hardest part has been trying to evaluate where our customers are going to come from and how they're going to get to our system. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, it's been SEO in the past. It's the search engines. Yep. Now it's more focused on GEO, right, and the generative side. And so we're trying to figure out, how is the benefit gonna occur in our, from a revenue standpoint, as more customers come that way. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market with tariffs and sourcing strategy and everything else, but the more that we can use that to do the scenario planning and to just really evaluate all the options, the better. And that's what we've tried to do. We're still in the early stages, but we're getting there.
Awesome. Priyanka, for you, like in your role as VP of Finance, what are you seeing? Same question, right? From a where you were last year to where you are this year, what are you seeing in both how you're using technology, AI technology, to kind of drive that AOP planning, versus also how are you then planning for the continued scale and adoption of AI?
Yeah, great question. So, I would say that last year AI was pretty exploratory in nature, right? Because it was still evolving and people were just thinking, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? How it's going to be? But I think this year it's pretty operational. And the way we've been working on this is we are trying to use a lot of things, AI to do, which could consume a lot of manual hours for my team, including in FP&A or even in GTM operations or RevOps or even right? When you do the AOP, you need, to build headcount models or efficiency models for these teams, specifically for a company, right? You need to do like a GTM modeling or support modeling. And we used extensively AI to bake those into OPEX and headcount models. And sometimes it's not just about building these models, but it also helps to get some data-driven insights, which helps you do better modeling. So I think that's something that I realized with AI this time, which was really, really useful. At the same time, when you do your modeling, right, you'd want to have some kind of scenarios built in, and it could be really fast. You could turn around things really fast. You should be just able to toggle. So I think AI really helped us to create some scenarios and toggle around some of those things really quick, which helped us, get more efficiency in the way we do things. And also at the same time, right, I think having a very good data-driven insight provides a good insight to management and everybody else, including your cross-functional teams, which was really not that much available back then when you don't have AI or you don't have good tools to kind of leverage in. So it really changed a lot of perspective, the way you were doing AOP this year versus last year, because this time you are much prepared. You have data-driven insights. You have a lot of capacity in terms of people, because you've kind of got rid of the mundane task and given that to, the different tools that's available out there. So that way you can leverage a lot in terms of AI and making the whole AOP process very, very easy and convenient.
Well, so let me ask this question as you guys talk through that, right? When we're using AI right now in AOP, right? It's active. Matt, Priyanka, how do you guys feel good about at what point are you like, I trust this data, right? Do you have the confidence to where you can go through with a light pass? Are you still really deeply exploring the answers and you want to understand how it got there? Like what point of comfort are you with it as far as when we look at building out your annual operating plans?
Yeah, for me,
Priyanka, maybe or Matt. Yeah, Matt, you better start. Matt, you can go ahead and start. Maybe let me know where you sit.
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? We're still finding errors in the information that we get back from our generative AI solutions at the moment. As we expand our vertical capabilities in each segment and each discipline, it's more specific or more customized to those solutions. It'll be better, but right now it's very general, right? And so we are having to spend some time ensuring that the data is correct in and out, and that we're not making decisions that are 100% based on an AI result at this point. We'll probably get more comfortable as time goes on, but at this point, we're just not quite there yet.
Gotcha. And Priyanka, what about you?
Yes, I do agree with Matt. See, AI is not going to give you 100% results here, right? Because it cannot replace people. I mean, I think that's the hottest debate everywhere out there. That is AI going to replace jobs or get people out of their jobs and stuff like that. So AI, I mean, you need to use your judgment to use AI really. Like Matt said, AI is not going to give you 100% accurate result. And what you need to do is use them to some extent, use them for repetitive tasks, and kind of, use your judgment to opine on whatever you want to get out of it, right? So that should be really the crux of it, honestly, for me. And I think one of the questions was what kind of tools we used. So, I mean, we use a billing. I don't want to quote the exact billing tool that we use, but the billing tool we use has quite a lot of AI insights in terms of how we do in terms of various metrics and ratios. And it also helps us to project some of those things, including pulling data from your CRM. So I think those are some of the good insights that we get from a GTM perspective or even from a support perspective. And you have tools which captures your tickets or, those kind of stuff. So just on a high level, touching upon that.
Yeah, I think to your earlier point, you mentioned people, and this is always an interesting one to me, especially now going into AOP. So I support a couple of our customers from a spend management lens, right? As they're kind of forecasting what their spends are going to be, and part of that conversation is always, well, is AI offsetting some of like what we're planning from a resource standpoint, from maybe not like in a reduction view, but like in a what we need to add view, right? Are we able to add scalable tech over people? And what I've found, and I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on this too, really quickly, is the answer is sort of, and the reason I say sort of is the outputs that you have from AI should be creating efficiencies, but what they're allowing you to do versus maybe do like a true reduction is to reapply people into more strategic roles where they give more value to the organization, right? So it's I always say that I don't need 9 reindeer on a sleigh, right? I need a Rudolph who knows how to lead 8 other AI reindeer to make things happen and to guide and to kind of drive those activities. And so that's where for me, I can now have what used to be 9 reindeers now be 9 Rudolphs leading teams of AI throughout the organization, driving things more efficiently, creating new opportunities for us, whether it's revenue growth, whether it's spend efficiencies on the back end. And so I'd love to kind of hear maybe how you guys are approaching that too, because obviously it's something we have to think about as you're forecasting your growth versus your people curve may not be in the same correlated trajectory they were before.
Yeah, I've definitely got some thoughts on that, Jimmy. I spent first half of my career at a Fortune 50 company where every decision we made that didn't have a measurable financial impact had to have some sort of headcount efficiency or avoidance or time or something like that, right?
Yep.
And as I've gotten further into my career, especially now being at a smaller company, I have definitely learned that first thing, adoption at the top has to be a key component, right? So if the people at the top are not adopting the tools that are being implemented, it's not going to go anywhere. So that's the first thing that has to happen. But secondly, to answer your direct question is, I maybe take a different approach than some CFOs or some finance leaders in that I don't immediately look or ask or require efficiencies. I feel like it's worth getting people using the tool because I see that there's potential, right? Once you get them using it, they're going to find their own efficiencies. They're going to find their own ways to improve their processes or their products. And so it'll take some time. The ROI is not going to be immediately there, and you shouldn't expect that it's going to be immediately there. You've got to wait and give people the opportunity to kind of do it on their own, and then you can start to evaluate: are they really doing what you need them to do, and are they making efficiencies? And then evaluate from there. One other quick thing I think that we don't often think about, at least in the finance world, and this applies to operations and other disciplines as well, that AI is going to remove a lot of what we would consider lower, entry-level jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And so we need to be careful that we're forcing all of this headcount efficiency or trying to find all these savings when we're really just we're maybe just shooting ourselves in the foot and removing that bottom layer of the people who will take our jobs someday, right?
Yep.
And so we just need to kind of think about that balance as well and make sure that we're not just stripping ourselves of the people who actually do the work.
Awesome. Priyanka, from your standpoint, I guess similar view of you, like how do you view it when you guys are doing your planning? Are you considering efficiencies? Are you just trying to empower people with tools and you're still keeping your kind of people growth where it has been in the past?
Yeah, I think I would say that when you're doing these kind of stuff, right, I think we need to redefine how you measure productivity. You cannot use the same tools or the same way that you've been doing last year or until many years back then, because the way things are evolving, I mean, there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of things that we are doing differently. So I think
Mhm.
defining things in the right way and then measuring actual performance against them could give you a better result, and using those as the benchmarks, I think you can do your AOPs better, you can apply those learnings, and that could give you more accurate and precise results. And like I said, I always believe in doing some scenario modeling. So do some scenario modeling on, say, productivity A, B, C, and see how you are doing in terms of the real results. I think that would help. I think that's the way to go.
Awesome. So obviously, one of the things that I find interesting, and Matt, I'm gonna maybe put this one to you, because you've been in the CFO role for a little bit, right? As you were walking me through, and how is the relationship with what the expectations of the CEO and board changed as maybe the CFO mandate is expanded within now kind of what AI is allowing you to provide and support in the organization, right? Is it more complex? Is it simpler? Is it stickier? Like what do you think?
Yes, to all of that. So, my relationship with CEOs has been, like I said at the beginning, right? Very strategic. At least that's where I try to put my value, my stamp
Mm-hmm.
on things, is helping them make better decisions, better informed decisions. And I have found that as the technology has evolved, I mean, it used to be the CFO's role was, typically oversaw IT, at least in smaller companies, and it was really limited to ERP, right? And it was reporting and it was metrics and maybe dashboards or BI solutions or something like that. But it's now expanded. I feel like it's on us to manage a lot of the AI capabilities that are going through the organization. At least in my org, I found that to be the case in the last couple of
Mm-hmm.
companies. And so when I'm talking with a CEO, with a board, it's been a little bit harder to align on priorities, from a spending perspective, because there isn't just a magic checkbox that says you're going to save this much or you're going to be able to reduce this number of people. But at the same time, I can provide them more information faster, and they can self-serve a lot of that information. And so it's helped them to be better prepared when we do have those conversations. And because it's, the buzz, right? It's the focus of everything we're talking about. I know that going into the conversation, they're at least going to be interested. It's not going to be new. It's not going to be a surprise. And so, hopefully all of that together will help us be better aligned and make better strategic decisions.
No, I like that. I think it's what was it? Sometimes the feedback I've got, I do these AI dinners, right, where I talk to different CFOs, and the comment is always, AI has enabled my CEO to want a lot more, meaning that the CEO. So the job of the CFO of reining that kind of CEO desire in to do everything all at once has become both harder, but also you're able to give them the actionable data and insights on why. Faster. So great. So the market, right? Like and Priyanka, like this is something that we see. I buy a ton of tools with AI. I buy a ton of AI providers for different customers. There's a lot of tools out there, and they're all shiny and they have bells and whistles, and everything demos fantastically and has these magical prompts that work instantly. As a finance leader, right? How are you kind of sorting through that miasma, right? So, and we'll start off with maybe in the finance org. So as you're thinking about FP&A, right? How are you able to say which AI tools or which AI functionality with tools you already have are actually going to make a difference? Like, how do you make that decision?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think so. That's a very good question. And the market is flooded with such tools out there, right? Which could just say or, do advertisement that, hey, we can automate half of your work or 80% of your work. And how do you kind of pick out what really works for you? So I would say the first and the foremost way to kind of measure that would be your ROI. What kind of ROI you are getting from buying that tool? Like what are you spending
Mhm.
versus what are you gaining or saving or whatever the way you want to measure your ROI. So I think measuring ROI would be the best way to kind of do that. And I think the second thing could be to kind of define that what are you really gaining out of trying to gain out of this, right? What is the tangible benefit that you want to get
Yep.
out of this? And it could be something subjective. It could be something which is probably not so measurable, but you have to define and measure and see that how you can, gain inside of that tangible gain. And I think that is something which is really important. If you are able to ascertain that plus the ROI that you're getting from the tool, I think those two things are really important. And third is your overall employee experience and the results that you're getting out of it, the data insights that you're able to provide to business and your cross functions and even to the management and the board, right? I think those three things would I think are the key focus areas will be for me, which I would use to determine which tool really shines out of so
Awesome.
many shiny tools, right?
Yeah, I think it's I have one of our customers, the CFO and I were talking the other day, and he goes, I need my business to put together a different type of business case now. Because, before the tool was, if I have a tool, it's going to help me do X, Y, Z. AI is different inherently in how you think about it, because it's not a tool that's just going to help you do X, Y, Z. He wants what are the revenue generating factors that are going to come from this? How is it going to provide agility for how you work with other departments and how you interact with other areas of the business? It's like the complexity that they're looking for, right at a CFO level, to justify the why, because everyone's got a shiny new thing they can buy, has become harder, because at the end of the day, I always, a lot of these tools, it's the CFO who has final authority in a lot of organizations on what SaaS and what AI, et cetera, that you're going to buy. Yes, the CTO or whoever has signed off on it. But, Matt, you got the strings of the purse. And so have you kind of revisited or changed maybe what you're looking for in that business case, even not just from your team, but from other teams in your org?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And in fact, I'll kind of tie my response into the question we just got on from David on which IA use cases, right, are worth scaling. I have found that I really have to boil down my own impression of tools that are useful to really two things. One, do I feel smarter by using a tool? And two, did it take me less time than before, right? If it's taking me just as much time, then obviously it's not doing its job. And then the kind of the overarching thing that I use in any decision any conversation that we have with any of the groups about, hey, I want to implement this new tool and I think it's going to do X, Y, and Z for me. The thing that I always have them talk about is the method of implementation, or the way that you have to put it in place, or the way that you have to install it, or is it complex? Because if it is, and it's complex to understand, and it's complex to use, it's not far enough along. There are enough solutions out there right now that are simple enough to use and simple to install and simple to get running and simple to scale, that you don't have to focus on the busy ones. And by the way, if the vendor is saying, "Oh, I need a 2 or 3 year commitment," run, right? If you're talking about AI specifically, because they should be able to stand behind their product. It's easy enough now to evaluate quickly with an AI solution that you can know right away if it's going to work.
Yeah, it's that bet on yourself, right? Like I use this in negotiations all the time. I'm like, if you're, and honestly, it's a lot of finance tools. We have this conversation with AI. They're like, hey, it's gonna accelerate your close, and it's gonna be great, and you're within 3 months, gonna be able to kind of see a very detailed forecast. I spent cool within 3 months, great. So within a year, I'll love it so much that I'll definitely renew. So. Cool. Let's do 1 year. So I agree with you, right? And I think it's a lever that you should be looking at as well. So when I think about that though, and this is what's interesting, you mentioned getting the tools, we get them in the door. Now, similar to how when we used to buy tools, it was very easy to measure usage from like an adoption standpoint. How frequently are people using the tools? In procurement, did I have requests coming through? What was my PO compliance? I had a rubric there. AI is a little different, right? Because your KPIs are now different. I use the conversation we had about earlier is one of the KPI. How well do you trust the data, right? How much time are you having to spend, scouting for hallucinations or trying to figure out how it got to XYZ. In the short term, yeah, you may have to spend some time understanding how it gets to XYZ, but long term, that number should drop to where you've trained an employee now to work for your work. So what type of on a finance lens, right? So let's look at finance tools that you guys are using today. What type of KPIs define whether or not that selection of a tool or that implementation has been successful? And Priyanka, I'll start with you because you mentioned you have some tools in flight currently. So how do you judge that you've bought the right tool?
I think, see, like I said, there could be multiple ways that you can judge, right? And there could be some ways you can measure it really because they are measurable, they are, quantitative. There could be some where you can measure qualitatively. So I think the one way to measure would be ROI. Are you getting the real ROI from it in terms of savings or in terms of savings of man hours of your people spent or savings in terms of, the number of other tools that you're using or the number of Excel sheets that you're using? And is it really helping you to simplify things? It should save my time, really. I think that's one of the biggest way to measure how certain AI is working for you or not. So I think that's one. I think the other metrics would be also trust, which is, often ignored, right? So a lot of times you use certain tool and, until you're really comfortable, you're not comfortable using it, you don't believe the results of that tool, then it doesn't make sense to use that tool, right? So I think trust is one of the biggest factor. But again, how do you measure it really, right? So, these things are still evolving, right? Because it has just started. So there are certain things which is work in progress because the tools have just started, but there are certain things which we've realized and which are tangible and which can be measured, which could be your ROI or which could be, the number of hours spent, or is it really shortening your forecasting cycle in the light of AOP, since we're talking about, is it saving some man hours? Is it helping you automate some of the routine processes which people would just spend hours and hours doing? So I think those are some of the things that I would see to kind of measure is the AI or the tool is really working or not, honestly. And again, like I said, it's completely evolving. We don't know how it's going to be in next 5 years, right? So things are really jazzy out here.
Matt, from your perspective, I guess it's similar lens because I'll just do the two-part because I want you to roll into the next one with it. Is how do you measure, right? What KPIs you use measure it's working, and then also in finance, how do you then say that whether it's the results of the KPI or it's an analysis during a POC or something? How do you say the risk of using AI for that solution? The risk is outweighing the actual benefit, right? Like how do you make those judgments, and what do you do when you do?
Yeah, this has been a real struggle, I think, within the finance community, this exact question, because it used to be we could say, here's the metric you need to follow, here's the goal you're supposed to achieve, and I can easily measure how you're doing it. But when it comes to using alternative methods through AI or other functions, and like for example, if my CMO comes to me and says, I want to spend $100,000 on this new tool because it's going to do X, Y, or Z and benefit us in all these different ways, I'm finding that it comes down similar to what Priyanka said. It's trust, but trust in the people as well. So what I've had to do is step back a little bit and say, okay, CMO, I can't measure necessarily if you're using your people efficiently or if you're paying them the right amount or they're in the right roles or any of that anymore, right? I mean, it's more like, okay, you've got a high, so I'm raising the bar and saying you've got a higher level target, you've got a revenue target you need to hit, or a marketing, ROAS that you've got to hit for this campaign. That's what you're delivering on. I don't necessarily need to be in the details of how you get there anymore, but you need to deliver on it. And if you don't, we're going to have a conversation, right? And so it's up leveled everybody, I think, a bit, and to think kind of higher level. but the risk reward thing, it's with the challenge of the data being more available, more accessible. Data governance is a massive problem, right? Especially when you're building these tools or implementing these tools. And so there is a lot of risk involved with just your information getting it in the wrong hands, or people making decisions with data that they shouldn't necessarily have access to. And it's hard, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to trust your people. And if people are not making the right decisions and you're finding problems in the results, then you got to make a change.
Okay. And I have a very good example here to talk about. So what happens is a lot of times, right? Finance team is working on financial statements all the time, right? You're doing your month close, quarter close, annual close, and everything out there. So what really happens in those times, right? You cannot use just the AI to get things out of it. Why? Because it requires a lot of judgment when you're doing financial numbers. You cannot, AI can help you maybe write the summaries better. It can help you draft the disclosures in a faster way. But the right judgment, the final control on the numbers, the narrative that you're portraying out of those numbers, it can't be done through AI. So I think those are some things that we have to be really careful. AI can be your co-pilot, but it cannot be the controller, right? It has to work in hand with you. As a finance leader, you need to orchestrate how you want to show AI or you want to use it, but you cannot. There's no rule of thumb that you have to use everything and it's going to give you the most accurate result. And a lot of times when you use AI, right, and it's still evolving, like we all know, so it keeps giving you sometimes wrong results, and sometimes you'll realize that, hey, I've used this result and this is wrong, and which could lead to a lot of issues in the future, right? Because sometimes you're doing your AOPs, etc. You cannot use just the AI basis and give it to the board, right? So it requires a lot of personal judgment too.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the you talk about the board, right? This is to me always a fascinating piece as we leave, or we start to leave AOP and present our plans. Is at what point do you have to kind of, I would say, turn off AI and take over the rest of, like, these are my words going to the board, right? I have to be able to stand by them. I don't want to stand by what a machine wrote and then start second guessing myself maybe as I'm reading it in front of the board, right? So at what point, Matt, do you say, hey, this is where it stops? It stops at kind of that maybe analyst level role, and now as the contextual architect of our financial org, I'm taking over, right? Like where does it stop, and then how far do you take it, and how much of what you're putting in front of the board and the CEOs is truly kind of AI backed?
Yeah, I think it at a very basic level, it comes down to materiality, right? You've got to set some thresholds for yourself. That any number you're talking about or any decision you're trying to make involves a certain dollar amount, and whatever that is for your organization, you've got to say, okay, I can't rely on AI for this. I've got to do it myself. But as an example, in the past 6 months, I think I've used ChatGPT 3 or 4 different times for technical accounting questions. And in at least 2 of those cases, it came back wrong. And I know it's wrong because I already knew the answer I was looking for based on experience. And I think sometimes we often try to talk our way out of problems, or say, oh, it was the system, or and now we're going to say, oh, it was AI that gave me the wrong answer. And that's not going to work, right? That's just not going to be sufficient in front of a board or in front of a CEO or C-level. So I think, to answer your question, anytime that there's any kind of analysis that goes up the chain, you've got to put your own eyes on it. If you're just doing something that's a repetitive task, or you're doing something that is a pretty simple analysis, or it's collecting the data for you to make a decision, that's fine. But if it's making the decision for you, that's a problem, right? And you've got to put your own eyes on it.
Yeah, I am anticipating the day where we hear about the first AI-led C-suite that is and how that experiment goes. Because the human condition still applies. Your experience, your history, tools don't know that yet, right? So Quick, there's a poll that's gone out, and I want to take a second to share it with everyone out there listening. And this is around your biggest challenge, this AOP season, and taking AI into account, maybe, or just in general. We have, balancing agility and accountability, right? Is it forecasting in what is an uncertain market with an uncertain direction on where we're heading from a technical standpoint? Is it aligning your spend and your expectations there with strategy, right? Because those don't always go hand in hand. Or is it securing kind of that cross-functional buy-in, getting teams to operate under, one set of vision? Priyanka, maybe you can talk about, of those four, which one is probably your biggest AOP challenge that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think I would maybe pick two instead of one. I
Okay,
think
I'll
the
let you.
first one the first one would be, I think, probably balancing agility with accountability, because things are constantly evolving, right? The way we do business, the way we strategize our GTM, the way you are managing your customer sentiments. I think everything is changing continuously, right? Because last year, the way I was looking at my GTM, probably it wouldn't be the same this year, right? So there is a continuous change and agility, which I need to maintain when you're doing a projection, right? Or you're doing your AOP. And when you do EOP, right, typically you try to do for 3 years. It's not just like for 1 year, right? So you have to think a lot of things, and you have to think about how is your plan going to scale in the next couple of years. So I think that's one challenge that I always foresee, because I mean, see, you have ways to control or mitigate that, right? You can do rolling forecast, you can have like scenarios, best case, worst case, and the middle case. So you can do all sort of things. There are some mitigative ways to work around that, but still that's a challenge that all the leaders have to balance on, right? And I think the other one I would say would be aligning spend with strategy, because a lot of times you have a cash restriction, you have a burn restriction, you need to work within a certain funds. Assuming you're a SaaS, you want to work around the rule of 40, or a manufacturing company will have a different limit. So you need to make sure that you work around that. And I'm not mixing burn with profitability, but at the same time they both work parallelly together,
Awesome.
right? So
Matt,
you cannot just work on burn or profitability in silos.
Awesome. Yeah. Matt, what about you from your standpoint? I mean, which one of those four maybe resonates most with what you're currently experiencing?
Yeah, the most difficult one for us, especially in being a consumer brand product space right now, is the forecasting and uncertainty, right, with all the tariffs and sourcing issues that we're dealing with. However, looking beyond that, right, I would actually say securing cross-functional buy-in, and maybe changing that to be securing cross-functional time. And what I mean by that is, I mentioned at the beginning just how, we're all aware of the overwhelming quantity of vendors that are now in existence who say they can solve every little problem and every solution and give you every answer you need. The problem I'm finding is, okay, this sounds great to me, but how do I get the time from my e-commerce team, or from my sales team, or from my operations team to go through the analysis and evaluate this vendor or evaluate this solution? Because we're basically slammed by the quantity of information that's coming our way, and it can be really hard to choose. So I found that I'm not going to be able to RFP or evaluate every single solution in this space. I've got to narrow it down before I even start looking at numbers. Just, okay, I'm going to pick these three and I'm going to evaluate from these three, right? And I have to do the same thing with my teams and get them bought in the same premise, so that we just can make decisions faster and not spin our wheels.
Yeah, I took the poll as well, and I landed on the securing cross-functional buy-in, and a lot of that is my priorities. The finance priorities that I see out there aren't always aligned with different teams. They have this is I think a little bit short-sighted sometimes, but they have different objectives that they're driving to, that they're trying to achieve, and the importance of AOP outside of securing budget for them doesn't necessarily like resonate on what we're trying to accomplish as a business. And so there are times where it could be with engineering, it could be with marketing folks, et cetera, where I've had struggle in trying to help them, even just forecast their expenditures, and let's now reference those or correlate those expenditures to how it's going to help growth, or how it's going to help the organization, or different global initiatives, right? They're trying to do. And the answer is always, well, I don't know. I just need to do this to grow. It's like, okay, but that doesn't work at the board level, right? Because we all kind of have to be linking all the way together. And so to me, that's been the change. I think the time component as well, taking the time to connect those dots is something there. So I have one last thing I want to do, as we're about 5 minutes out, and this is something that I think every dinner, every phone call, anything I have with someone in finance, I ask this question. And we're going to focus at like the CFO or the VP of finance role, that finance leader role. It's 2030. Okay, we jump in a time machine. We've Marty McFly has taken us on a ride. Jaws 50 is out. It's 2030. What does the CFO mandate and CFO role look like in 2030? What do you think the responsibilities and expectations are going to be? Priyanka, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I would say that, those days are gone when finance would just report the numbers. I mean, we are no more just the number reporters here, right? I think the role is changing from a financial steward to someone who can architect the whole finance, right? Architect the way things work and be more like an orchestra rather than just being a steward. So I would say three things would really define how a CFO would work in 2030, right? I think the first one could be, AI driven decisions. We should be doing more AI driven decisions where we know what's happening. We could do scenarios. We could understand the pros and cons of doing certain things, and that too not just subjectively, but more numerically, more quantitatively. We should be able to define those things. I think the second could be data driven insights when you're working with different teams, etc. Having those data driven insights would help you make better decisions, and you're not just working and sitting in silo and just doing your finance things. So it'll be more about working with the different teams with data insights. And I think the third would be what you mentioned in the previous poll, Jimmy, which was getting cross functions buy-in or working more closely with cross function. I think the way it kind of works sometimes is that I think finance is sometimes just a recipient of information instead of being actively partnered around making those decisions. I would say, when you look at 2030, the financial leaders would have involved so much that finance is like the key stakeholder in all those decisions and conversations, and it could lead to a better cross-functional discussions and results.
Matt, so Matt, you have your hoverboard. You're on your way to the office with your inflatable jacket. What do you think that CFO role looks like?
I think it's going to be similar to what we just heard, right? But there's going to be a lot of consolidation and consolidation across functions. I think because data will be more accessible, processes will be more efficient, et cetera. And so, for example, the historical separation between maybe a CFO and a COO, I think those lines will be much more blurred. They've already started to blur, obviously, over the past 10, 15 years, but it will be much more blurred. And I think at the leadership level, we're going to see CFOs take on more and more and more. Because it's usually not COO usually can't do a CFO role, but a CFO role can usually do, a COO role as well. Yep. And you're going to see more acquisition of responsibility, I think, for the CFO, just because they're naturally going to be involved in more decision making as that data just becomes more and more available and easier to get.
Awesome. Well, I agree with both of you. I think this sounds different, right? But more and more orgs are already starting to make that consolidation effort with different team members and different functions, kind of doing a roll up that, we're solving for that, right? From this cross-functional standpoint. This has been great. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Matt, Priyanka, your insights, your just some of the stories you've told have been great for me, right? Because I nerd out about like where AI is taking us. So thank you so much. Obviously, let's stay connected, and in 2030 we can do this again and see if we were right.